Welcome to this week's Art Wisdom podcast with Chris and Kat.
And this week we have Maggie McDonald back with us. And this week she's going to talk about licensing your art. So I suppose a good point to start, Maggie, would be, what is licensing your art?
Yes, hi everyone, and thanks for having me back. Lovely to virtually connect again. It's always good to see you guys. It's lovely. We're going to I'll share with you I guess a bit more about licensing. It's a core part of my business, and it's one of the I guess income streams in my business that sometimes kind of helps when I guess actual artwork sales are a little bit slow. So I set up the licensing side of my business quite early on in my art career, and it's something that I really enjoy doing because there's something about seeing your art on stuff. It's always been something that I really love. And it's quite a simple process. So I will probably just start with explaining exactly what licensing is for those of you that don't know. It's basically using licensing or giving a company the permission to use your artworks on products. And these days, companies can print on pretty much anything. When I started my art career, digital printing was just starting to take off and become accessible. You could just start printing things on, fabric and all sorts of different things. Now it pretty much can be printed on anything, right?
So, honestly, when you said it can be printed on anything, the first thing to come in my mind was, can we print on the moon? Which is a bit how big can we go?
It's a fair question. We could potentially, how far can we go? But it's really cool. So there's we can dream. It's always good to have, shoot for the stars. So so it's been really interesting to see. I think the first licensing that I did was a company in the Philippines approached me and they were like, we found your artwork on Instagram and and it literally was just a little photo of some art that I had done, was a close up. And they were like, we make phone cases and we would love to license your art. And they licensed one artwork. And it was really pretty simple. It was just capturing a high-res image of this artwork. Back in those days, I was just doing it on my phone and then zooming in and doing lots of editing on it. So it looked really crisp and sharp. And I sent them through the file. We had a little contract and I was getting, I think it was like 10% of every phone case sold.
Wow.
And I was like, that was really cool. I was like, this is so awesome. And then just, they sent me a couple of samples, and just seeing your art on something like that is just such a rewarding feel. It's really cool,
very exciting.
Right? So very exciting. So that's kind of how my licensing business started. So then over the years, so the way it's kind of evolved is I've gone from, capturing it on my phone to now having it captured by a professional image capturer or photographer.
Oh yeah, like having someone to do the digitization, number one.
Yeah,
also,
digitization.
I mean, even if people aren't planning to do licensing, getting things digitized makes it so much easier. Firstly, it's good for to have like a digital repertoire in case something in the future comes up. But also, I feel like if I ever let an artwork go and I haven't photographed it, it's only happened once, I'm so sad, because sometimes you just want to pour over the image again. And it's like, I've got no record of it. No.
You have to, the record keeping. Absolutely. Yeah. So I'll go back to basics, I guess. So licensing can take many forms. Mainly for us as artists, it would be you would have an image, and this could be of an existing artwork or something that you have potentially maybe captured and then worked around in, Photoshop or Illustrator. And so how it would work is you would either approach a company or a company would approach you, and they would request to license a specific image. And you would then go, I guess, down the process of deciding on, the terms of how the image would be licensed. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a sec. And then you would then have that image captured. So like we said before, I now have my images captured by a professional photographer, and that actually gives us the best high-res quality, because you've got to remember you cannot be licensing artworks and then when they printed, they pixelated and it's not a good image. So
Oh,
that's
yeah.
very, very important to remember.
Yeah.
And then you basically license the artwork. Just you agree on the price that you'll be paid for the licensing. You need to agree on the terms of licensing, which could be the time that they're licensing it for, the industry that they are licensing it for, and then whether it is exclusive or non-exclusive.
Right.
Okay, so
Nice.
those are the things that you need to kind of look at. So I have created over the years my own little contract. It's always good to have things in writing, and it's very
Yes.
basic. Yeah. So it's, obviously you don't want to be licensing an artwork to a company and the next minute you're seeing they've printed it on every single thing they can and they're making a lot of
Yes.
money off your artwork, and
Right.
you're basically, you've been paid say $250 for this license, but they are making hundreds of thousands of
Thousands
dollars
of
off your
dollars.
art.
Yeah.
So this is very important to do. Most of the time in kind of like the art space, we your bigger companies, the ones that I work for, they will have a contract that they will send you,
Mm.
and it'll be very specific about where they are allowed, what they were allowed to reproduce,
Mhm.
where they're allowed to sell that. A lot of them will retail and wholesale. So you've got to really look at all of those different things. And then how long they have the license for, and how, if it's exclusive or non-exclusive.
Yeah, and
So
I think it's
yeah,
really important for everyone to when you get a contract, to look at it so carefully. It wasn't even technically it was licensing, but it was licensing not for products, but it was
yeah,
someone asked me to license for a news organization, right? Which sounded good, but I sent the contract off to someone and they were like, do not sign it because they have like exclusive rights for in perpetuity to be able to print it on anything, create any level of products. And I was like, oh, it's just, and I messaged him and said, hey, I'm happy to license it for any and all digital media news and or print news, fine, but not for like any aspect of whatever it was. And then they also had in the contract that they could transfer the right to other people. So I was like,
Wow.
so then
whoa.
exactly, so you do not know, you've got no idea of the scope of
Yeah.
that. So, and it is
Yeah.
like, and like, you've got to remember, like as an artist, you own the rights to that artwork for
Yeah.
forever. Like, it doesn't, if you are licensing your artwork, that does not mean that they then own the rights to that artwork. They own the license to reproduce that artwork, but you always retain ownership of your artwork, of
Yeah,
any
unless they
image.
write it
Okay.
into the contract, which
Yeah.
But exactly, so
you've
you
got to
have to
watch
be
out.
very careful. Exactly,
Yeah.
because most of the bigger companies who do lots of licensing, they will have a clause in there saying that the rights of the artwork will remain, that like it will remain the right of
Yeah.
the artist. So those are the
Unless
ones
they're
that
dodgy.
know how this works, unless they're dodgy and they want to
Yeah.
make money off you, and they
Right.
just basically want to get this artwork for not for very little and then
So
reproduce it
yeah.
on
I
all
suppose you've
these
got to be
specific.
careful as well of where you actually want it, because like you're
Yeah,
saying there, Kat, your artwork could have been on all these trashy things that wouldn't
yeah,
represent you as an
Well,
artist.
for me, it's like I make my own product, so I didn't want to.
Mm.
You didn't want to create a
you don't want to
competing product,
dilute. Exactly,
right? I
that's
didn't want to do it
exactly.
because, like, I'm very particular about my quality and all that kind
Yeah,
of stuff when it's
Yeah.
like in my in-house stuff. And whilst I was so comfortable licensing for news and media and that kind of aspect of like communicating this is something cool that's happening, I didn't want to necessarily say, hey, you also have all the rights to produce like I was like, the thing that I asked myself, the question and the reason why I didn't go for it was that I was like, if I was Van Gogh, would this be acceptable?
Mm.
And the answer was absolutely hell no. Because like, could you imagine giving off the rights to like the
Yeah.
sunflowers or something to someone? Obviously,
and yeah, and that's the thing, like you've also got to look, I'm jumping around a bit, but I feel like you've also got to really look at, is this aligned with my brand? Okay,
Yes.
I
Yeah.
know when you're starting out, you're kind of like, oh yes, yes, yes to everything, because
Mm.
we do that and you want to get your work out there, but you need to also really look at whether the brand that wants to work with you is aligned with your brand and your core values,
That's
because
such
it
a good
is,
point. Because
Mm.
like
yeah,
if for instance you were like part of your ethos was like, I want to
Yep.
be eco-friendly, I want to produce, you know, and my brand is about talking about, you know, loving the planet. You don't want your artwork printed on a plastic cup
no,
that's disposable, right?
absolutely.
So,
Yeah,
you know what I
exactly.
mean?
And
Or
it's like,
things.
it's easy to get bamboozled and think, oh, you're going to do this, you know, and if you're standing for something, that's exactly right, you know, and
Yeah.
if you're, and, you know, it's really hard then to say no, but I have said no when it's just like, it's not aligned with my
Ooh,
brand.
who have you, what kind of
Um,
products have you said no
So
to?
mainly I do get a lot of requests from companies in Asia, and like it's a lot of like printing on things, and I'm kind of going, well, this is not my this is not my brand. Like, I'm more aligned with brands in Australia. I find like it's all very much an Australian made kind of
Yeah.
thing for me.
Yeah.
And it's all, you know, like, that's the whole thing. It's all and I'm finding that mainly the companies that are approaching me are companies that are aligned with my values, because I feel like the values that I put out on my social media are very clear. So
Yeah.
that kind of attracts that specific person or company that want to work
Nice.
with me. So that's been
Ooh,
really
I love
interesting to
that.
see. Yeah. So you
Mm.
really need to be just on social media, there's really be very, and the word authentic gets thrown around so much, but
Mhm.
you do need to just be very true to, I guess, your core values in
Yeah.
everything that you do, so that it kind of comes through
And we
that
did
you
an
attract.
episode on that last week,
Yeah,
didn't we, Chris?
this is the thing, right? So
Important.
and it's hard because you want to be out there and you want to work with
Yes.
everybody. So yeah, so I feel like, so to go back to, maybe, you know, I get a lot of questions about, how do you find these collaborations? I call them collaborations. I don't necessarily think like I'm, you know, selling all this design. For me, it's always about, how can I collaborate with this brand? And I usually love the products that they create. So for me, it's
Yeah.
like, oh my God, I would wear that, or I would use that, or whatever it
Yeah.
would be. That's usually something that would decide for me whether it's one that I would work with, or really,
Yeah.
you know, go for or not.
Yeah.
So there are a couple of ways. There, on social media, mainly, I've been approached by a lot of companies, like I said before, who are, you know, like similar kind of values, and have seen my work and have said, we would love to work with you. Can you
Oh,
very often create an original artwork for us? We will then
yes.
take that commission artwork, and that will be digitized, and then that will be used as the artwork licensing image. So in that case, you actually are charging for the creation of the original artwork. It's an exclusive artwork to them. And
Right.
then you are
Right.
also
Wow.
charging, that's a separate thing. So like when
Yeah.
you're doing creating a specific artwork, especially an original artwork, that does push the price of the licensing up quite a
Oh,
lot, because it's
absolutely. And especially if
exclusive.
it's going to be
Yeah,
exclusive. Because I think that's also
absolutely.
something that people don't think. They think, oh, this is my price. But
Yeah,
like whether it's exclusive, it's like, and remembering, once it's exclusive, that's it. You've got to keep your word and not license it to anyone else. So it's a one and
absolutely.
done.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's a lot, you know.
And keep in mind that this is, you know, legally, like, you need to, if you've got a contract and you've signed it, you cannot be licensing that to someone else.
No.
Like, it
No.
is like, you could
No.
get in a lot of trouble for that.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be doing that, because, you know, like, that will, you shoot
No.
yourself in the foot, because no
No.
one, then you, something like that happens, and, you know, it's going to spill over into other things that you do. So be very mindful when you do that. So yeah, so it's kind of like doing the exclusive, which is obviously a higher cost. And then you would have an exclusive license for an existing image. So often people will be just like, oh, we really like this artwork. Do you have this as a licensing option? And I have most of my artworks digitized.
Do you have a
And
section on your website that says, oh, I do licensing?
I used to.
Huh.
I'm just working at the moment again on some more ready kind of licensing images that can actually
Yeah.
sit there, because it's kind of like a whole nother business. You could just be doing licensing as a business, and a lot of
Yeah.
amazing artists in this country that I follow and that I know that do amazingly well just with licensing their artworks. For me, it's a section of my business. So I did used to have a licensing section, and I'm working on it again at the moment to have some stuff there. Um, And that's the thing, right? So then you decide, okay, so then it's it could be an exclusive license of an existing artwork, and then it could be a non-exclusive license of an existing artwork or whatever it might be.
Nice.
So it absolutely depends on what the company needs. And I start, and especially when you're only starting out, and like we're all the same pricing for artworks, for anything we do is so hard to figure out, right? So I figured this out when I was starting out. I would actually send messages to artists that are doing this like really well and say, do you mind sharing with me what you think I should be doing and things like that. And it's been amazing because I've really gotten this kind of like amazing feedback and like built up this kind of understanding of how it works now. So when you're starting out, it's always good to say to them, you open that email. This is what I do. I was like, oh, I would love to work with you. What did you have in mind? And then I would say, happy to work with your budget, because when you're starting and you really want to get your stuff out there, you have an idea of what you want to charge, but you also want to work with this company.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's always very interesting to kind of, and then I just kind of open the discussion.
Yeah.
And then I would say, these are my fees, but, I'm happy to discuss budgets and I'm happy to work with you to find, something that works for both of us. Right. So that's often a very good, and you're opening the discussion. You're not saying, this is my price. If you can't afford it, then you're not going to work with me. I am not like that, right? So take it or leave it. So
I think actually you're right. Like, you should never negotiate someone into a corner. I think having some level of flexibility, but I am the great believer that there is a negotiation style that will suit everyone, and there's a way of making it work for everyone. Like for instance, it might be a lower upfront fee, but they might pay you a larger percentage of the sale if it was like an item to be resold, as an example.
Absolutely.
So
And
there's like ways you can work it.
Absolutely. And it works, and it, like you said, there's a way of doing it. A way of it's gentle negotiation. And it is, and what I find is, like, by doing that, you're actually not just licensing your artwork. If you do get the license, that you're starting and building a relationship with a company. Okay, so a lot of the times it will be like licensing to a magazine, for instance. You are creating a relationship with that person at that magazine that works in the art department, and they know you and they have you on file. So there will be return licensing opportunities. And by maybe just doing that negotiation and kind of coming to the party, as I say, to get the license, then you're actually setting yourself up for further licensing opportunities and more, I guess, income,
Maggie,
income from
what would a magazine license art for?
So I just recently did a license with a Mindful magazine in Australia, and so they have a quarterly,
the beautiful covers. Is that what you've done?
Beautiful, and they work with Australian artists, and every quarter is a different artist on the cover. And it's so beautiful, and it's got all beautiful mindfulness coloring in and mandalas and all these beautiful things. And they also created some craft papers out of some existing artworks that I had. So there's 4 different craft papers that you can take out and make things with. So this is just, the opportunities are there. And that's a good relationship to have with them, because they do, it's an ongoing, and it's one magazine in a big company of magazines. So there's a lot of opportunity for cross promoting. And then there's also, like we know this artist, we've worked with this person, and she'd be good to work with. We love her art.
Having personal recommendations between them all is amazing.
Absolutely. And so it's important in that respect to make sure that you have your ducks in a row, right? So that you have, when you're sending you're licensing something and you're charging money for it, that the image that you are sending is high quality and high res, so that they will continue working with you, because the work that you are sending through they can use it, and it's easy, and it's not a fuss. Also make sure that you're returning emails promptly. And I'm an artist, right? I'm not the best person at returning emails on time, and I can be very organized or very, very unorganized. So for me, I've learned, like, if you're easy to work with, they will work with you again. Okay, so make sure that you're actually responding, and that you're using very professional language, and that you have all your things kind of set up like that.
Can I go back to the approaching them? So
Yes.
how, like, first off, you might, I don't know, find magazines, find companies that you want to work with, and do you just look up who to send an email to, or where do you even start with that?
It's that's an interesting thing. I think a lot of people don't know this, but a lot of the companies, so what I would suggest is, so you follow your favorite brands or companies who do things like this on, and a lot of in Australia, like, oh, I don't know, like in the US, but there's just this explosion of using Australian artists' work on everything, right? So for us, it is just a massive industry. So you would, I guess a lot of the time, if you're following big brands or small brands that you really love, they will often put a call out for submissions for artworks on their social media. Okay. And yeah, and so there'll be a lot of companies in Australia run artist submission competitions where
I
you can
wonder if you
submit
can search for artist
and you
submission
can,
competitions.
yeah, and
Yeah.
then you could, and a lot of these companies also, when you go to their actual website, right down the bottom where all those little the FAQs and the terms and conditions, you'll often find an artist submission button down there. Okay, so a lot of companies do have that, or work with us. And if you click on that, it's like, if you would like to work with us, you can send us some of your work, right? And they accept submissions all of the time. You may not get a response back straight away, but they do actually file all of these in like a folder, and you may actually get a response and get in that way.
So if you were
Yeah.
sending that, you'd send an email, and would you send a few pictures of what you were thinking? But the pictures wouldn't be high res for them, would they?
No.
don't
So
want to
you
do
never
that.
send a high res image when you're like doing that
Okay.
initial things, okay? Because it's blindly going in there. So you're like, you don't know whether, until, and the authentic, ethical companies will always, kind of respect that, and they will, they will ask you for the high res, and they'll know that that's what you do. But there are unfortunately a lot of companies out there that are dodgy, that are ripping artists' work off and
It
taking
might
it
be
straight
worth
from
even,
internet,
it might even
putting
be
a
worth like
watermark on it.
watermarking it, and then
Watermark.
also searching, just say like, is such and such a company a scam, or
Yes,
looking
absolutely.
up that company and then ripped off artists, and just see what comes up. If nothing
That's
comes
another
up,
one I was just going to mention,
yeah.
because I'm a bit of a because like it's the world of scammers, right?
It
I'm
is,
just
there's
like
so many.
investigating everything all the time. Like I'm automatically the first thing I would do when I get approached is like, I will go straight to that company. I will go through all of their social media. I will check their website. I will go down the wormhole of trying to find out, who is this? Where do they sell? A lot of them will be like, check us out on Instagram. And I'm like, click the link, and there's like 5 posts, or it's not working, or it's redirecting. Those type of things are red flags. Okay, so make sure that you're looking for an established company. It doesn't have to be huge. Just make sure that what they are claiming is actually followed through. It's unfortunately happened so many times, and it's happening more and more now, that artists are having their work stolen from Instagram and just screenshotted, and it's not even high res, and it's being printed on stuff everywhere. So it does happen. So you make sure that you're protecting yourself. Okay, but yeah, so I would say, and a little bit of flattery is never going to hurt, right? So be nice. Be nice, right? I'm like this, right? So I'm like, I absolutely love your brand and would love to collaborate if ever the opportunity comes up. I am an artist, and this is what I do, and I feel that I'm not obviously going to be, sending my beautiful bright artwork to a company that sells t-shirts with just black t-shirts with, you're going to look for the ones that you love, right? So I think that we would be a really good fit. Here are some examples of my work. And these companies have people who sit and go through social media and find people to work with. So if they've got already someone there that wants to work with them, like, you've basically done half the work for them. Okay, so
That's amazing.
got to remember that they have teams that go through social media now and check to find artists that they want to work with. So it's like it's fine to send them a
Yeah.
message and say, you know, like, I'd love to work with you if you ever did something. So that's one thing that a lot of people don't know. There are a couple of licensing agencies as well that you can work with. I know in Australia there's Artshine licensing. They do a little bit of work there. I'm not with an agency. I just license out of my own kind of business.
Because also there's a middleman then,
Because
and
there's
they
a middleman. Yes. Yeah.
they take a cut of it. Now sometimes that's
Yeah.
beneficial because
Yeah.
if you don't
And
have
they
the
do the
time
work.
to do it.
Exactly.
But
And they do also go to the big like the big shows like Certex and all of those ones. So, you know, if you
Certex, what's Certex?
so it's just like a big surface design kind of yes, like an expo. So it's basically printing on fabric and things like that, and they take your designs there and they will show them to buyers and like small manufacturing and like companies who buy big. So that's another side of it, if you are doing, you know, surface pattern design and things like that as well. So so I guess for me it's a really good way of supplementing my income in my business. And it is a, you know, it's a rewarding way of seeing your art actually, like I
It's
guess
awesome.
used on different kind
yeah.
of substrates, which is really, really good. And it's an easy thing. You do not need to have, you know, 500 artworks for licensing. You just
No.
need to have some work. And if a company, for instance, will say, oh, we really love this, do you have this as, you know, and sometimes I'll go down to like 3 years ago and go, oh, I really like this. And I'm like, well,
Right.
that's unfortunately, we do not have that. And I don't have that artwork anymore. And not everything obviously is digitized in high res. Like that's the dream, but it's not the reality. So I will then either, if it's something that I'm still creating in that style, I will offer to create something for them similar, and then we'll kind of go through. But again, it's an opening the conversation and then seeing what works for both parties. So
Would you say that most of yours have come from people that you've looked for, or people that have come to you?
People that have come to me. So it's been really interesting. So most of my licensing has come from mainly from Instagram. Like
Is that
basically
like because
just
of like the reels and just getting that massive exposure?
yeah.
Amazing.
So just put a reel up and then people will just like, we really love this. And you found me through there and just went, okay. And then, you know, I think we're really good fit and how can we work together? So that's, you know, kind
opportunity
of,
dances
it's amazing.
with those on the dance floor. That's how I always say, like, if people don't put their stuff out there, they're missing so many opportunities.
Absolutely. And it's like, you do put a reel up or an artwork and you don't expect that, you think, oh, I'm trying to sell this artwork, but then what might happen is someone will like, we really like this, we don't want to buy it, but we do want to license it. So that has happened with, and certain artworks have very strange, but there are certain artworks that I've created over the years that are continuously the ones that people want to license. So you get to, very interesting. And because you've got, so you've got a licensing, you know, contract for a certain period of time, and you've got it for an industry, you can license that artwork because it's very interesting. Specific ones are very popular. You can, because you hold the rights to it, you can, or you know, a previous license has expired, or it was licensed for a different industry. It was printed.
Do you keep like a database? Because it sounds like there's so much going on. You need a spreadsheet.
I don't have a spreadsheet. I cannot do Excel. I just have like a document for licensing on my desktop, and it has everything I've licensed and all the contracts in there that I've had signed. So that's the thing, you know. And if you don't remember, you just go in there and go, hang on a minute. So the date of that was that. So that's expired. So I'm okay to actually license it to someone else again. So you know, I'm organized, unorganized. Like it's you know, it's a system to a point.
It works. That's all that matters.
But it works.
With
absolutely.
An image that you get, I've heard that they like to do it in collections, and then that seems to get all like, there's a lot to that then, with all the different colors and different colorways. Do you need that?
You don't need that. No, it depends. It depends on how much energy you have or want to put into your licensing side of your business. So I had previously created, like I said, a section on my website, and I had a bunch of, you know, a collection not of the same colors, but a collection of artworks that had been very popular for licensing, and they were all kind of on their low res, ready for people to, you know, say, I would like to license this. I don't have that at the moment, but a collection is almost always better than just having one artwork for license. If you want to really pursue this, I would suggest have 6. I always go with 6 in a collection to start with, okay, because 6 is not as scary as 30, right? Because that's just crazy. So 6 in a collection. For me, 6 things together make a collection, enough of a collection. So you could potentially have 6 artworks that are ready to license. Have that on your website. I do know of quite a few artists who have ready to license artworks on their website, and they have all the terms and conditions, and you can just pop it in your cart, and you can get that, you know, say however $5.50, you license it. A lot of it's non-exclusive, so it's just, you can just buy the artwork and print it on whatever you want to print it on, and then the file gets sent to you after you've actually checked out. So that's kind of like a really simple way of doing it as well. So if you're savvy like that, and you can set it up on your Shopify, and you have your artworks ready to go, and you then obviously would have the digital files ready to go.
Have you ever done it through another website, like a stock image website or something like that, or is that stuff that you've avoided up until now?
I did a little bit on like Society6, like
something like
years
that.
ago. Yeah, but again, just starting out and wanting to get my stuff printed on stuff, right? So kind of did some artworks on there. I've sold probably like maybe a couple of beach towels and some cushions. And it's cool because Society6 shows you how to, like, it mocks it up. So when you're starting out, it's really cool because you're like, oh, that's what it's going to look like on a cushion. And this is really cool. I think I ordered for myself and my son like a laptop cover each with my
Honestly,
stuff on
Maggie,
it.
everything in my house, if I need something, I'm like, oh, if it has my artwork, it's a business expense.
It's really, really cool. We're going to do this. Yeah. So it sits there. You Google me, you'll see my name and all this stuff. I've done so many things over the years.
But more than
because for me,
Society6,
it's like,
I mean, like, because you can license your artwork on things like Getty Images or that kind of style of things. But I'm always concerned if I would do that, because I haven't done that. That's probably
no, I haven't either. Yeah.
That people will, what people do is they license the cheapest option for like personal use or whatever it is, but then still use it for they kind of got a license when they're not really. So I always feel like that's not a great way, but I know a lot of people that make videos that license a lot through that method.
Okay, that's very interesting. I guess it depends on where you are. I feel like if you're just starting out and it's a bit of a foot in the door, then you're probably a bit more lenient. Not saying to completely just be a pushover and just put all your stuff out there and let it all go into the world.
Yeah, because you know, the other thing is you don't have control of who gets it then.
No.
Whereas if they come to you and you're selling it, and even also, like, I suppose to a degree, if you've just got on your own Shopify, if they just check out, there might be you don't really know.
No.
Who knows where it might end up on?
Yeah, and this is the
and some
thing,
people are totally fine with it, and some people
exactly, and that's where those licenses are. You know, I guess specifically non-exclusive. They are not. You know, they're a license that is like you're not kind of licensing as an exclusive. You're licensing more for the fact that yes, it is, say, however much it costs, but it's just like, you're not as precious about. Does that make sense? So you feel like it's fine. I make my money through that. That's my business model, and that stuff gets printed, you know. And then the other side of that would be custom design, would be, you know, $1,500, because that is custom. It is designed specifically, and it has a specific licensing term tied to it. So there's so many different ways of doing it.
What's the worst deal you've ever got? The worst deal I ever got was someone asked me to make a custom artwork for a TikTok video, and I was like, all right, do you want to buy the artwork? And they were like, oh no. And I was like, all right, well, can I sell the artwork? And they said, oh no, because it was for a movie studio that was like a superhero movie thing. And I was I was like, so well, hold on a second. You want me to make a bit of content that you don't want to buy, and I also can't sell? That was
Yeah.
like, okay, that's
So it's
just
like,
easy, no.
what? Yeah, that's like, how does that go, right? It's fine.
Mm.
I'll make the artwork. You just, I'll just have it here. But then, yeah, I guess that's the stuff that you have to look at. Like, do I want do I want the job? Do I want
Yeah.
to get this,
Mm.
done? And how much of it aligns with me and how much of it doesn't? If there's a couple of
Branding
things
again,
that
isn't
are
it?
Oh yeah,
exactly,
they didn't want to pay hardly anything for it. They
no.
give me a couple $100,
And
and
this
I
is
was
the
like,
thing, and I do the ones, and I get so many, sometimes people, oh, I would like to work with you. And you're like, yeah, I guess it's going to cost you $500 for this design. And then you
right,
just nothing, right? Or
Yeah.
other people are like, awesome, that's great. So
yeah,
the other thing is also, like some people think it's really cheap, and they will just come and think they're going to pay you $100 for the artwork. And I'm like, but that's unfortunately not how it works, and
yeah.
then that'll be the people that would kind of not respond to you, or you just never hear back from them. But I do get a lot of those kind of requests to license. And obviously, as you get further along in your career, a bit more confident about the process, then you are a bit more confident in saying, no, this doesn't align with my brand, and no, I'm not going to give it to you for really cheap just because you really want it. Like, that's not
$10.
business. No, I'm sorry. So
How does it work,
um,
Maggie, with, like, say, the percentage? Because you said
Yeah.
earlier that the percentage of goods sold, you get, say, 10% or whatever the percentage is. So how do you know what's sold?
that'll be in the contract. So how it works is either you get an upfront fee. So some companies will pay you upfront royalty fee of, say, $2,000 for whatever they sell. So they will not pay you again. They will pay you the licensing fee, and they'll pay you an upfront. And this is negotiable, and they will tell you, we will pay you upfront, or they'll say we pay royalties on this percentage basis. Okay. So some companies will pay the licensing fee for the image, and then they will give you upfront royalty for the next 2 years of whatever it might be, and that might be whatever they give you. So then what you need to do is you need to then go research, okay, how big is this company, how many of these products will they possibly be selling?
Oh, so you
And
have to sort
does
of guess what they'd
so
sell.
yeah, and so does the amount of royalty that they are offering me upfront equate to what I think, or you think, is going
It's
to
fair.
be the amount of sales that they are making? Okay.
And also, like, it's worth bearing in mind, of course, when they make a sale, that not 100% is profit.
Absolutely
So
not, right?
they might, most companies will make max probably 30%. So if you're getting 10%, that seems like quite fair.
It's good, yeah.
But yeah, it depends, right?
It
That's so
depends,
interesting.
absolutely. And the thing for me is, like, this is a passive income stream. Once you've licensed the artwork, that money just comes in. You are not doing anything else.
Yes.
Okay, so remember
hands-off.
that's the thing. So the upfront is not a very common payment method for the royalties. Most companies will go from 10 to about 30%. Okay, so you'll get a 10 to 30%. It depends on who you're working with, depends on how big they are, depends on their turnover. All of these things you've got to kind of have a look at. And then what will happen is it'll be like a monthly payment or a quarterly payment, and it'll be calculated very often not on the retail price. It's done on the wholesale price if it's a bigger company and they're on sale and things like that. So I work with a company called Artist Lane in Australia. They produce high quality art reproduction prints. And that's their business. And I've worked with them for quite a long time. And so what we do for them is, I've just done a collection of 12 new artworks, created them exclusively, and they have been digitized, and then they have been all sent through. And then so what will happen, the collection will launch and it'll be exclusive to them. So I am not allowed to license those artworks to anyone else. I am, however, allowed to sell the original artworks because I own them still. So that's kind of like it's a double. It's good for me. Once I've done the work, they do everything else. They do take care of the manufacture, the marketing, the selling, everything.
Yeah, because even the customer support and all the logistics,
everything
is a pain in the butt, because I do that myself. So sometimes you would happily give up percentage of profit so that you can be just the person that focuses on making the artwork.
And that's exactly right. So that's the thing. You've got to get past that thing of, oh my God, they're taking you know, like 50% of this, like that is their business. They are taking that
Mm.
money because they have staff that they are paying to do
Yeah.
marketing, to email lists, they're doing production, they do all of these things, right? So
Yeah.
you've got to just put it into perspective that
And even if you were
they're
doing it yourself, you probably wouldn't be getting the percentage anyway,
no,
because you
because
still
of
have
the
to produce the item. You probably still have to pay someone, or if not, you pay with your time, which you could be
and
making other
manage
artworks.
everything, put all
Yeah.
the marketing out there. So it's really good to, you know, kind of just understand that this is a passive income stream, that once you've done the work and you've licensed the artwork, it is something. And then what happens is I will just get an email every month from accounts, and they'll be like, these are your sales for the month, this is your commission, please raise an invoice. So
Do you
that's how
ever
it works.
feel like sometimes certain companies might not be honest with their sales of those items? Or, I mean, obviously you probably work with only reputable people, but I suppose that is one thing, is that some
It's definitely
companies could
something
say,
to,
I only
yeah,
sold 10, they sold 50 or something, you know
yeah.
what I mean? So
And again, I think it's a thing of being on top of and aware of companies and how they're trading and what
yeah,
they're doing. So make sure that the companies you are working with, you're signed up to their email list, you are following them on all their social media, and I guess that you keep a very open communication with the
yeah.
person that you deal with, right? So that you can query that and say, oh, it looks like you guys are in a nice way again. Oh,
Haha,
it
it
looks
looks like
like
you
you
sold
guys are
hundreds.
doing so well. Like this seems to be doing so well. And then kind of like a gentle nudge to say, well, hang on a minute, you're paying me for 10, but you're actually clearly doing really, really well.
More,
You know, that
yes, it's a
kind of,
good thing to just keep an eye on, for sure. One
yeah.
thing that I have done, because I actually have licensed phone cases myself for the first time.
Very cool.
For a
Love
company
it.
in Germany.
Yeah.
However, one thing I did is I got them to send me test prints first. And I know it's probably not possible with all of them. And it turns out that they just cannot print blue. I don't know what it is, but it's the way that they convert their images. So like half of the images, I was like, yes, you can have these, but you make the artwork look so bad for
Yeah.
those other
See,
pieces.
yeah,
I'll send you something
absolutely.
else.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, you know, and especially when it's in a different country, right? You have no real control over what is happening there. So it's always really important to make sure that you're getting, you know, a sample print of it before it goes live. Because again, it's your brand out there. It doesn't matter that
Yeah.
you know, like it's got your name on it.
Yeah.
And everything that you're sending out into the world that is attached to you and your brand needs to be aligned with whatever it is that you're
Good
doing. Like there's
quality, hopefully.
nothing, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. There's nothing worse than it coming out and you going, oh my God, that's
Oh
the
God, it
wrong
doesn't even
color.
look like the image. For mine, it
Doesn't
did,
even,
like
yeah,
sometimes the way that they print. So
yeah,
in particular, the way that you send print files,
yeah.
whether it's RGB or CMYK, and
That's,
how they convert it. 'Cause
yeah.
printers don't, computers work in RGB mostly,
And printers are
printers work in CMYK.
CMYK.
So
Exactly.
in that, sometimes there's issues there, but also I think I found particularly, like, I have one, oh God, I'm eating my hair. I have one screen in my whole house that is spot on for printing. The rest of them, even though I've used the little spider utility, it's like a little suction camera thing you put on your lens, put on your monitor, and it like adjusts the screen. But like sometimes things will be like way too bright, way too dark. And I did a test once, because I've been just testing for my own products, and I tested 13 different companies to do desk mats, the exact same file, 13
All
totally different prints.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like some of them looked amazing, some of them were way too dark, some of them were washed out the house. So it definitely, like, I think even if you've got a good monitor that you're pretty confident, you just don't know what their printing is going to end up like. So it's good to get a test.
Because they all use different software to print. So
Yes.
every single printer they've got, or you'd think it's all just the same, right? But it's not. So every printer uses, and then they all have different printers. So they're all calibrated slightly different.
Yeah.
So especially when you're working with, you know, with licensing, with printing canvases and things like that as well, it's always really good to get some test prints done, because it can vary so much. And it's really like, it's really hard to then after the fact have to go and figure out how I'm going to fix
Oh
this. So
yeah,
it's always much better to test print and do it at the start, because it saves you a lot of drama and kind
100%.
of work
And
afterwards.
when it comes to, I know this is a bit personal, but like what percentage of the money that you make is associated with doing licensing? Is it like 10% of everything you make as an artist is down to licensing? Is it only 5%, or is it much more than that?
It depends on how many licensing contracts I get in that period of time. With this new collection, for instance, once that launches, that'll obviously bump up the commissions again, because I have a collection with them, but it's an old collection. It was like 4 years old. So
Oh gosh.
when we're refreshing this, and it's the current stuff that I'm painting at the moment, which has been very popular, you're thinking, okay, so this is, hopefully going to bump up that commission again. So then it changes, it fluctuates probably about on a normal month, like maybe 10%.
Nice.
And then it can go up to, a little bit more than that. But again, it's passive income. So once the
That's
work is done,
amazing.
it kind of comes in, and it just kind of, it's just something that once you've done the work, and it is a lot of work to have it all captured and have it all, done. But once it's done, it's actually just something that generates income
Well
for
done.
you. So
That's awesome.
yeah,
That's
and I
amazing.
feel like if you could be, as an artist as well, it could be your business model. You could potentially just, kind of, and
It
it's
could
the
be
same with,
100% for some people. Yeah, that's
it
right.
could be
definitely.
100% of your business. You could potentially just be
Wow.
creating a collection of works and just be licensing those. You would not
Yeah.
technically even need to paint anymore. Like a lot of artists I know paint in the season that they're painting, they create a body of work and they capture that, and then that's all that they sell. They sell the originals, and then they just sell the prints of that. And again, that's passive income in your own business, because once the print has been captured and it's there, you're not making another artwork every time you sell a print. It's just selling like prints. It's a really good income stream for a lot of artists, and it keeps you going when you're not with you the same. Like it keeps you going when you're not because we cannot paint 24 hours a day. Oh, we try, but we can't paint 24 hours a day, like 365
I
days
saw this
a year,
TikTok
right?
where it was like, if you want to be a successful artist, you need to make 2 to 3 paintings a week. And I was like, ha! You'd be good if I got 2 to 3 paintings a year.
Exactly. This is the thing. And the thing is, like, a lot of people, and we're digressing, like we're going sideways now, but like printing, it is another way of, kind of getting your work out there. And it's often, licensing those prints that are the income stream for a lot of artists, that keep them being able to do this full time, and then also being able to not have to have that pressure of having to create,
and also
like,
keeping them inspired, isn't it? Keeping yourself inspired. If you're doing this and little chunks of money from different things, then you do actually get to live your passion and not become a burden for you. So
that's exactly right. And this is the thing.
idea.
So often when you're like, oh, just, like nothing's selling, because we all know like the peaks and troughs of a business, right? So, and they've got the, a bit of a trough with maybe original art sales, then I find then those will be the times that the prints will sell, and your customers are different customers too. An original artist, a customer who buys an original artwork is different to the customer who buys a print. So you've got to have an option for everybody that would like to buy the art from you. So that's why I've got many different kind of options available for different customers. So
This
so
is
that's
so
another
awesome.
discussion.
I honestly think because I haven't ever, so I've had people come to me, and I've got a few. Now I realize that you explained licensing. Now I realize I've actually got a couple things that are licensed elsewhere, but often I will say no because it's a competing product. But I'm going to be like on Google straight after this. Trying to find people.
Who can I license my work to? This is the thing.
Why not?
And it's it's sometimes it's just that little bit of injection of income that you need in your business when maybe some other things are not maybe going that well. Like, and this is the thing, like the bigger companies have the money to spend, right? So, and they're
Yeah.
forever looking for that next thing and that next, thing that's going to sell their product. And it's like in that way, like that collaboration is such a nice kind
Awesome
of
thing. And at the end
thing
of the
to
day, if
do.
someone can make an extra $5,000 to $25,000 a year comfortably
Yep.
from doing something like this,
Yeah.
I think that's awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also
So,
some people,
Sorry, I was going to say,
That's okay.
have we covered everything with you, Maggie, or is this something that we've taken you off track with
no,
here,
we
that
and we
you've
can
been-
talk until
what,
no, absolutely covered everything. And it's like,
what I would
I don't
like
know.
to ask, because I've got a few questions.
Yeah.
I forgot what I was going to say earlier, but oh yeah, also my final thought was that some people don't want to do the logistics and the customer support and whatever. And I think if you know in yourself that you're comfortable doing that, it's fine to launch your own products. But if you don't want to do that, these products are amazing to license. What I want to ask, and you don't obviously do not give names, but what are some of the things that have gone wrong, and what can people learn from, or like, what are things that people could potentially get tripped up by? Or maybe there's an artist friend who's had a difficult time with licensing, or there's something that's not gone right that people can learn from those mistakes.
Yeah, so I think, there's obviously, it's always going to be things that go wrong and we kind of learn from them. But yeah, so definitely would be, I guess, being very specific. So about the products that you are licensing, this is one thing I've learned and why I've put it into my contract, so
Yeah.
that you don't have an instance where you've licensed the image and the next thing you're seeing this image on something else, and it's like something that you license and you've kind of had a royalty payment up front for something because you thought it was only, this has happened where you've only licensed it, you thought you were licensing it for this product, it was
Right.
then produced on other things, and then you've had that upfront royalty payment and it doesn't cover the amount
Yeah.
of sales that would be like ever generated through what you have kind of done. So that's definitely something you have to specify, that it is a specific. So if it's for jewelry, you have to say jewelry and accessories, right? If it's going to be
Right.
printed on stationery, it's going to be specifically on stationery. You need to stipulate in the contract that is what it's going to be printed on. Like I said before, the companies who do this for a living and who know what they're doing and who are reputable will specifically have that in the contract. Okay, so that's kind of how I've learned to do all of that. The other thing is, like we spoke about before, is not checking the print file. So the RGB CMYK thing, where we're seeing it on the screen in a certain color and it comes out completely different color on the other side, and then it's been printed and they've printed 1,000 of them and you're like, oh done now. Usually with our art, it's not like with my art, it's just what happens is it fades it. So when you converting from RGB to CMYK for print, my artworks just look really faded out. And we know, like, my art doesn't look like that, but that's what happens. And so unfortunately that has happened in the past where the print file was in the wrong color space, and it printed. And you would assume that, like, most people who do this a lot, like on the other side, they will say, make sure that you send this file, but some don't, and you may be busy and something's happened and you're like, oh,
well, that's a good point. So like there's a few things you can ask companies for their print profile. You can ask them how they want to be delivered, and of course asking them if they can do a test print, preferably, to send to you,
and
would
this
make
is
a difference.
absolutely. I'm just working with someone at the moment with a company who do lots of this type of stuff, but with a very vibrant piece of art. And the colors that I use are really hard to translate onto fabric because it dulls them down a little bit.
Yeah,
so we
because
have
you
done
have
a
like
lot of
fluorescence
work.
almost.
Yeah, so the fluorescent. So then what I've had to do is with the fluorescents, when I'm creating like an artwork for someone, I would actually try not to use them because they do not translate really quite well on prints, especially fabric. Fabric is a bit more dull. So we have now gone around and done 2 different files, and 3 different print suppliers to try and get
Okay.
the right thing. But this company I'm working for, they know how to do this. They
Oh,
know, you know,
amazing.
like that's, you know, maybe this type and the types of fabric as well. So then
Yeah,
there's certain
nice.
fabrics, the colors come up a different way. These guys print in this color, you know, with this printer. This guy prints with this printer. So we've changed printers and like sampled and sampled and sampled so that we can get it as close to the original artwork as we can. So that is also something to be really mindful of, that the colors that you are using. And even for my print range with Artist Lane, I did not use any fluoro in any of the new artworks that I created, because we have
Right.
found that they do not photograph very well, and it's
Yes.
really hard to reproduce them. So that's something that I've had to really think about. So they are
Right.
small things, but it's stuff that you learn from mistakes, and you
Yeah.
learn, I'm not going to do that again. Next time I send a file, I'll be double checking what color profile they use. You know, those type of things, you know, because that's like after the fact, when the stuff's all been printed, there's nothing you can do about it.
No, and you don't
Just
want to
got to
end up
suck
with
it up
landfill.
and go, that was, you know, I should have
Yeah.
sent that file, and it looks like this. It's not completely, it's not awful, but it's not the way I would have liked it.
Yeah.
But it
Doesn't give you
was,
joy.
it's,
Yeah.
you know, like that's, yeah, that's kind of like
So that
the
sounds like a
mistakes that
really
happen.
good company. They're trying different things and keep trying to get the thing. And say like with Artist Lane, they're just doing prints. And do you find it that most people will do a sample for you to okay first? Or is it,
With
you know, once
Artist
you've sent it
Lane,
over?
that's done with them, because with them I've been working in for such a long time. I trust them so
She
much.
knows.
I'm like, they are all over it. But yes, with some, like if anyone that I'm working with that's a new
It's
company, I
new.
would certainly ask for a print sample,
Yeah.
because obviously I don't want to be sending, like we said, things out
No.
into the world that are not up to my
In-
stand. I'm very particular about
Yeah.
how things look. So I've just started working with a new a canvas printing. I've never done that before, and it's very new for me.
Right.
And so that's been very interesting, because what it looks like on my screen and what it looks like on their screen, I went in there to go and have a look at it. It's not the same.
So different.
So we've had to do some work on that actually, to make sure that it is aligned and that the color profiles match, and that the way that it's printing is right.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely not wanting
That's-
to make sure that what I'm sending out there is actually
Yeah.
what it looks like. So
It's an art
yeah, so
getting
a lot
that
of
right,
work.
isn't it?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
look, it sounds like there's a lot of ins and outs, but once you get to a point where you're actually, you know, having a little bit of a system with this, it does become a little bit easier. And then
Oh,
finding
yeah.
someone that can capture your artworks for you is it's worth its weight in gold.
Yes.
So this one thing we didn't talk about is, like, you can either photograph your art or you can have it scanned.
And
So you can have scanned artworks, and you can have it photographed, and then it gets the highest res that you possibly can. So
yeah, and I would also say, like, try if you can to go to a reputable person that actually does artwork scans. I've had people that like gone to photographers because there's no one else around, and they kind of said they kind of do it, but they're not really sure. And 9 times out of 10, the results are like, it's difficult because the first person I ever worked with was amazing. So like,
this is me. I started at the top, because back again, I'm saying back in those days, like I'm an old person,
back in
my day, but there was not a lot of options. It was one of those things where digital printing was just starting. You could only, there was only a couple of places in Sydney that would print, or in Australia even. So I, you know, like went to the one only person and that could do, and she was doing capturing, like it's 3D digital captures, right? So it's like the highest standard of capturing that you get. So, and you kind of like learn, and that's the standard that you hold yourself by. So it's, you know, important to find something that works for you. Obviously, if you're starting out, like it's fine, but you need to find a photographer that does fine art photography, that knows how to actually do that, because there's a difference between just any photographer and one that does art photography.
And also with the scanning, great for smaller pieces, but not for textural pieces. It shows up all the. So no good for you, Chris, because you do big textural stuff.
Oh, I have. No, I have had some big textural ones.
Had them scanned. Yeah, we've got We've got a couple
Really?
of really
Oh,
amazing companies here in Sydney that do
wow.
that. And then the other thing is also
Huh.
the color correction and making sure that
Yeah.
the file that is scanned is matching your actual artwork, because that is always sometimes that can be a bit of a hard thing for photographers to get right, because your
Wow.
art scanners are on the ball. They will know exactly to match those colors, but you're finding with the photographers, if it's not an art photographer, it's really hard for them sometimes to
Yeah.
match those colors to your actual artwork. So that's something to look for.
Bear in
But if
mind.
you're starting out and you want to start doing this, then definitely if you have a good photographer that can do the art photography, then that's a really great way to start.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
the
and if you're
scanning's expensive.
bootstrapping,
Yeah.
just use your phone to
Yeah.
start off with. It's not
Yeah.
the best, but I'll
For
tell you
small,
what,
yeah, but it
it's a
also
good
depends on
space.
how big you are reproducing.
Yeah.
You're reproducing a 120 by 90 centimeter canvas, and you're trying to do that from a photo that you took on your mobile, then that's not going to work, right?
No
But
bueno.
if you're producing if you're reproducing phone covers or things for small products like
Yeah.
earrings or whatever it might be, then yes, you can actually use your phone for that.
Yeah.
Like, it's not it doesn't then necessarily have to be the highest res in the biggest file
Yeah.
that you can find.
That's
Before
really
we wrap
interesting.
up, Maggie, could you give us some examples of like companies that people might, be able to go to, like who actually does, who looks for licensing?
The licensing, yeah. So
Just
a
to
big
give
one in
people
Australia.
an
Yeah.
idea of sort of like, oh, it's that kind of thing, or it's that kind of thing,
Yeah. So I know in Australia there's Kip and Co, which is a really, really well-known homewares and clothing brand, and they actually do a design competition every year. And then like kind of does that. There is another one called, this is a scarf company called Bravery and Co. They are a cancer survivor company that create beautiful scarves for people going through chemotherapy, and they do a design competition every year as well, and they also take submissions for art, things like that. I've been kind of seeing their stuff around. I'm just trying to think who else. There's quite a few different ones. Like, I'm just trying to think. I might actually send you through some more names as well. Maxwell and Williams is one of our big companies who,
they have
they do
beautiful
a
designs
lot of
and-
licensing. Yes, there's a lot of artists that I know that have been licensing with them recently. So definitely go and have a look for that artist submission tab on the bottom. So a lot of these companies do the art licensing and kind of take the submissions, and they will put these competitions out. Usually it's once a year, and the best way is to sign up to their email mailing list, and then they will send those details out.
Beautiful.
So
Nice.
And I suppose like there's Maxwell and Williams, because I've seen them in like homeware shops. It's really maybe just go around homeware shops with your notepad and pen and take notes of who's doing what.
And you're right, even companies that don't necessarily explicitly state it on their site, you'd be surprised. In fact, actually, you probably have more luck, because there are, they're probably looking for people, but they don't have open submissions. So it's always worth it. Yeah.
And everyone's looking for that next new original thing, right? Because let's be honest, like, being original now, it's hard. So all these brands are competing in this space, and I'm finding in Australia this space of this bright colored artwork and lots of botanicals and all of these things, and they're all kind of competing for that market, because that's how we're shopping. And they are having to go out and look for people to use the artworks, right? So if you can kind of get in touch, or I guess get your foot in the door, then you kind of, like I said, you're doing some of the work for them already.
I love that. So the 3 top things I've picked from this is go on the hunt for companies to work for, and don't be afraid to approach them. And I think that's the biggest thing for me. I mean, also along that is put your stuff out on Reels and get that exposure, which we're going to be talking about next week. But right, because people will find you. Number 2 is being careful of the company reputation. So doing a bit of research. Are they reputable? Are they going to be good people to work with? Number 3 is read the damn contract.
Yep.
Yeah. Amazing.
Most important. Yeah, so that's, you know, kind of, that's it. Like it's simple, but it has, like you said, it's got a couple of rules. It's basically the three things, you know, you've got to remember. But apart
Right.
from that, it's just create the art and put it out there so people can see it. And
That's
you don't know,
exciting.
you never know what's going to happen, you know.
Anything
So
you want to add, Chris?
You never know, don't you? And I think it's a beautiful little add-on to any art business, because we've already done
Yes.
the work. And it's
Yeah.
just, even if you keep it small, like you said, you license a couple of things, you know, get you on the go and see. And it's another thing, challenge yourself, start sending letters to people to see if, you
Yep.
know, they're
Yeah.
interested. It's an exercise for us continually, isn't it, to put ourselves out there. Be brave, just
Right.
put ourselves
Yeah.
out there and see what comes back. We've got nothing to lose,
Absolutely.
really.
Nothing
You
to lose.
don't
I
have
love
nothing to
that.
lose. Yeah.
Right,
And the
well-
thing is, you put yourself out there, and you know,
Yeah.
like what they can either say yes or no.
That's
You
right.
know, what if they say yes? It's, you
Yeah,
know, how
right.
exciting. Yeah.
Mhm.
Or maybe they'll know someone that you can be referred to, which,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
like that's all. Because if someone comes back and says, I like your stuff, it's not for us, you can say, oh, do you know someone that is for? You never know. Referrals
Yeah.
are brilliant.
Fantastic. Yep.
Right.
Awesome. Well, as always, ask us in the comments below if you have any questions about licensing. As always, our social media links are in the description below. Give us a follow if you want to catch all the future episodes. Next week, we are going to be discussing the habit of producing great content. And also, I suppose it's how to be seen amongst all the noise. So until then, keep creating, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Maggie. Thank you.
Pleasure. Bye.
Yeah.